He called me data lady in a board meeting once, right in front of everyone. My actual title? Director of Compliance Architecture, 6 words he never bothered to learn in 2 years. Data lady, like I was just handing out Wi-Fi codes or refilling the coffee machine. I smiled, not because it was cute, but to keep myself from smashing a chair across his fancy desk. For 6 years, I built the company's privacy framework from scratch, piece by piece. I wrote the internal rules, the vendor checks, the encryption audits. My work kept us ahead of regulators and lawsuits. My name never made the press, but when trouble hit, my inbox lit up at 2 a.m. Suddenly, my tiny, windowless office by the server room was the most critical spot in the building. I was a hero until the crisis passed. Then, it was back to being invisible, with maybe a Starbucks card and a mumbled thanks from a VP who thought GDPR was a coffee order. I got used to it. I wore their silence like a shield, letting them think I was just background noise. That's how I slipped in the kill switch without anyone noticing. But that day, I should have known trouble was coming. The new CTO, fresh from a crashed crypto startup and obsessed with words like agility and disruption, called a privacy alignment sync. He brought pastries, like sugar could sweeten his plan to gut half our protocols. I sat at the table's end, notebook ready, pen in hand. He didn't glance my way once. I've reviewed the audit notes, he said, waving papers he clearly hadn't read. We're overcomplicating. Overcomplicating? My audit was 117 pages, color-coded, packed with access logs, breach scenarios, and a flagged API issue that could have leaked user financials to anyone with a login. But yeah, sure, overcomplicating. I spoke once, calm and clear. Section 5.3 indicates a critical vulnerability if the user token cache isn't rotated every 72 hours. He blinked. Okay, so rotate it every 96. The intern across the table, his intern, of course, laughed. I didn't, because what he suggested wasn't just lazy, it was illegal in half a dozen jurisdictions. But he was already moving on, talking about leaning out compliance and elevating user experience, which is code for let's cut the safety net and hope no one notices until after IPO. My report sat untouched on the table. I'd spent 4 weekends writing it, missed my niece's piano recital for that audit. My notes, my warnings, my digital lifeboat, ignored like a terms of service checkbox. They closed the meeting with a team selfie. I wasn't in it. Back at my desk, I stared at my screen. Outlook pinged with a new calendar invite, org structure sync mandatory. No details, just 30 minutes next Friday from HR. That was when I knew, not suspected, knew. When your audit gets tossed and the CTO starts ordering muffins, you're not on the team anymore. You're on borrowed time. The email came at 7:12 a.m. Subject line, realignment notice, confidential. No greeting, no explanation, just a calendar block for 9 a.m., a Zoom link, and a short sentence in bold. HR and executive leadership will be present. I didn't finish my coffee. I didn't need to. They always do it on Fridays, fewer witnesses, fewer questions, fewer chances for someone to flip a chair and make a scene in front of Brenda from payroll. By 8:59, I was logged in, back straight, hair tied, blouse ironed. If they were going to bury me, they were damn well going to do it while I looked immaculate. The CTO was late, of course, but HR wasn't. Melissa, poor thing, looked like she wanted to melt into her swivel chair. She started with the usual HR sorcery. You've been a valuable member of our team, and this isn't a reflection of performance. It's a strategic pivot. The CTO interrupted, finally arriving, wet hair, hoodie, smug. We're flattening the org, automating non-core functions. Privacy will now roll under DevOps. More agile, more scalable. He said it like he was announcing new cafeteria options. I didn't flinch, not when he butchered the structure I'd spent 6 years reinforcing, not when he said non-core, not even when he held up the folder like it was a goddamn party favor. This includes your exit packet, he added. We've prepared a fair severance for someone at your tier, 1 month's pay plus 2 weeks for transition support. I raised an eyebrow. Transition support. He blinked. To help DevOps understand the legacy architecture. Legacy. There it was again, their favorite euphemism for anything not built by a 26-year-old bro with a GitHub full of half-baked frameworks and a podcast about grind culture. Melissa slid the PDF into the shared screen. There's also an NDA as part of the severance terms. Standard language, nothing unusual. Nothing unusual. I read the entire thing, every clause, every line break, while they sat there, silent, fidgeting, Melissa pretending to check her Slack messages, the CTO smirking like he'd just pulled off a heist with a $5 ski mask. Then I hit clause 10. In the event of a verified client data exposure due to internal system failure, all provisions of confidentiality, including non-disparagement and trade secret protection, shall be considered null and void retroactively. I reread it 3 times. It was buried between indemnity clauses and mutual arbitration. Legal wrote it as boilerplate, probably to cover their own asses in case a breach subpoena forced someone to testify. They didn't know what they'd given me. I looked up, smiled, looked straight forward. The CTO nodded like I was a good little girl, finally learning to color inside the lines. I signed, and just like that, I was gone. No send-off, no goodbye lunch, not even a LinkedIn endorsement from the people who used to flood my inbox whenever a compliance deadline loomed. My badge stopped working by noon. My email account deactivated before I hit the parking lot. They didn't even let me clear my desk. Melissa said they'd box it and ship it to my address on file, which they got wrong, by the way. I lived at 311, not 113. But whatever, let them ship my mouse pad to a stranger. That weekend, I sat on my balcony with a legal pad, a bottle of rye, and a copy of the NDA printed double-sided. I highlighted clause 10 in pink, drew a box around it in red, labeled it in block letters, the switch. Because they didn't fire me. They handed me a grenade, and I was going to wait, not to pull the pin, just to watch them dance around it, thinking it was a paperweight. The first Monday post-firing, I woke up at 6:45 a.m. on muscle memory. Showered, dressed, made my usual 2 slices of cinnamon toast and bitter coffee. Sat at my desk. No Slack pings, no emails, just me, my laptop, and the sound of a trash truck dragging metal down the alley like a war cry. The quiet should have felt like relief. It didn't. It felt like waiting. So, I opened a spreadsheet, titled it Postmortem, Ongoing. Column A, Date. B, Source. C, Incident. D, Risk Level. E, Notes. By noon, I had 2 entries. One from a former teammate who texted, "Did they really scrap your Tier 2 token policy?" CTO said it was over-engineered for growth. Another from a recruiter who whispered that the company was hiring full-stack privacy engineers out of Poland. Translation: we're outsourcing, baby. I kept it casual, nodded through phone calls, joined a Slack group for freelance compliance consultants, even built myself a sterile little website, white background, sans serif font, LinkedIn-worthy. Privacy architecture, risk mitigation, systems you can trust. I took a few boring gigs for fintech startups who still thought GDPR stood for General Developer Requirements. Easy money, zero drama. But I kept my ear to the ground, and the ground was rumbling. By April, I noticed a job listing for Regulated Financial Product Lead on their careers page. Buried under buzzword soup was a single line: experience with embedded consumer credit products required. Credit products. They were about to offer an app for buy now pay later loans, meaning they were stepping into CFPB territory without the privacy scaffolding I'd spent 3 years convincing legal to build. I checked their vendor policy. Still using the same low-grade analytics provider I'd flagged twice for storing unredacted user IDs. I remembered the fight. The CTO said we couldn't afford to pull it, they power our growth engine. I said they were logging sensitive metadata in plain text. He rolled his eyes. Growth always won. Now they were about to wrap that spaghetti mess around people's credit lines. So, I added a row in the spreadsheet, April 7th. Source: Careers page. Incident: launching regulated product W/out updated compliance backend. Risk level: critical. Notes: CFPB requires 5-year retention of user opt-ins. Current system purges at 90 days. Then I did something petty. I set a Google alert for the product name, subscribed to their newsletter with a burner email, joined a subreddit for users of the app, and checked weekly for complaints. When I heard from Aaron, my old QA, that they'd merged the security team into DevOps and laid off the last staffer who understood token expiration logic, I didn't blink. I just added it to the sheet. April 20th. Source: direct. Incident: eliminated final QA/compliance overlap staff. Risk level: severe. Notes: no current staff knowledge of rollback protocols. Also made a folder on my desktop, failsafe/FYI only. Inside it, annotated PDFs of my old audits, screenshots of internal dashboards, Slack exports I pulled the day before my access shut off. Everything timestamped, organized, searchable. I wasn't planning to use it, but planning was kind of my thing. My therapist called this period processing. I called it watching the iceberg drift closer while the captain mixed cocktails. I started setting calendar alerts, too, one for quarterly investor reports, one for regulatory disclosure windows, one for their annual compliance attestation deadline. Just in case they forgot. They always forget. By May, layoffs started quietly at first, internally labeled as strategic reshuffling, but ex-coworkers talked. 2 staffers gone from InfoSEC. 1 contractor ghosted mid-sprint. Their LinkedIn pages went dark. I sent them quiet DMs out of kindness, not curiosity. Every move they made, I logged. Every shortcut they took, every crack they painted over, I wrote it down. Not because I wanted revenge. Because they were building a funeral pyre out of my work, and I was going to make damn sure I could prove it was them who lit the match. It started with a text from Aaron. Not a "Hey, how are you?" Not a GIF, not a joke. Just, why is my own email showing up in our user behavior dashboard? I blinked, reread it. Then the follow-up hit 10 seconds later. No, seriously. Our internal analytics tool is echoing live user data. Names, emails, transactions in clear text. No redaction, nothing masked. This can't be real. It was real. She sent a screenshot. There it was, her personal Gmail, her demo credit line, her transaction timestamps, all visible inside a QA dashboard that was supposed to be sandbox only. Internal devs had merged the staging and production environments for efficiency. And now user data, real user data, was leaking like a bad nose job on a humid day. I didn't panic. I opened my spreadsheet, June 11th. Source: direct Aaron. Incident: live user data appearing in QA tools. Risk level: catastrophic. Notes: confirmed breach vector. No masking. Likely affects analytics pipeline. I called her. Did you report it? She laughed the way people do when they're standing ankle-deep in floodwater and someone asks if they tried turning off the faucet. CTO says it's expected behavior from the legacy systems, she said. His words: called it a hiccup in deprecation. Of course he did. Legacy. That's what he always called my architecture, as if 6 years of proactive compliance, layered access control, and encrypted logging was some outdated fashion trend. I was out here installing floppy disks while he dripped code in React like it was artisanal olive oil. You documented it? I asked. Sent an email. CC'd product. Nobody responded. Slack, he archived the thread. Of course he did. I told her to stop. No more messages, no more screenshots. Just breathe and get herself a personal attorney if she hadn't already. She was too good to get burned for his arrogance. Then I called Will, my friend for years, a lawyer the way a crowbar is a locksmith, smart, blunt, and expensive. I told him what I knew. He didn't gasp, didn't ask for tea. He just said, "You say anything right now, they'll spin it. Let it go public. Let someone else do the screaming." So I waited. And when it broke, I'd walk in with the timeline already built. I opened a new document, timeline, breach progression. June 11th, initial internal exposure via analytics. June 12th, CTO dismisses issue, blames deprecated systems. June 13th, Aaron escalates, Slack thread archived. June 14th, no mitigation, exposure ongoing. I pulled my old audit and highlighted the sections on internal analytics governance. There it was, page 73, paragraph 2. No production data shall ever be visible within non-regulated QA dashboards. Breach potential. High. Dated, signed, timestamped. I added it to the evidence folder. Meanwhile, their careers page still bragged about cutting-edge data strategy and proactive user protection. Cute. And while I watched, they kept digging. That Friday, I noticed a new job post, Crisis Comms Lead, temporary contract. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee on my mouse. Rats weren't just jumping, they were hiring lifeguards for the flood they built. I checked their blog. Still no public statement, still acting like everything was fine. Meanwhile, the internal team was in freefall. Erin texted again. 3 engineers had quit, and legal had pulled her into a meeting to remind her of confidentiality protocols. "You good?" she asked. I was great. I was calm. Because now I wasn't documenting potential risk, I was archiving active malpractice. And once that hit daylight, Clause 10 would snap open like a bear trap. No more NDA, no more silence, no more waiting in the dark. Just me, the receipts, and the very loud sound of consequence. The headline hit at 6:03 a.m. Eastern. Fintech startup exposes thousands in data breach. Sensitive consumer info leaked via internal tools. The article didn't use names, not yet. But I recognized the language, the quotes from an anonymous former engineer, Erin, obviously, and a source close to internal operations, probably that DevOps contractor they ghosted in May. The phrase, misconfigured analytics environment, showed up 3 times. By 6:12, it was on Twitter. By 6:27, #Datagate was trending. By 7:01, Crunch published a follow-up citing concerning architecture decisions by prior leadership, which, in their mind, meant me. Cute. But the real music came at 8:43 a.m. ping. Email from General Counsel at Com. Subject, need to connect. Data exposure, high. We're currently conducting an internal investigation into recent reporting and may require input from former team members to assist with technical context. Please let us know if you're available for a short call today. Regards, Jason Caldwell, General Counsel. He didn't say breach, didn't say lawsuit, didn't say they'd already gotten an email from the Federal Trade Commission at 7:40 demanding a full internal systems log by Friday. But I knew they had. I had my sources. I didn't reply. At 2:17 p.m., a follow-up hit, subject, following up, confidential opportunity, high. Understand you may have concerns, and we're open to discussing a paid consulting engagement inclusive of legal protection. Time is of the essence. Now we were getting somewhere. I opened the message, read it once, smiled. Then I opened my receipts folder. I took a screenshot of the PDF page they gave me the day they booted me, the one they didn't read because they thought I'd just roll over like everyone else. The page with Clause 10 neatly highlighted in yellow, like a warning sign no one took seriously, in the event of a verified client data exposure due to internal system failure, all provisions of confidentiality, including non-disparagement and trade secret protection, shall be considered null and void retroactively. I attached the image. Then I typed one sentence. Per Clause 10 of the agreement you drafted, I am no longer subject to confidentiality obligations. No greeting, no sign-off, no signature. I clicked send at exactly 2:34 p.m. That's when the silence started, and the real fun began. Because now they knew. Now legal understood exactly what they'd done. That in trying to muzzle me with their little NDA, they'd handed me the legal equivalent of an ejector seat with rocket boosters. I watched my inbox. Nothing came, no reply, just read receipts. Panic in digital form. I imagined Jason white-knuckling his ergonomic mouse, calling the CTO and saying, "Did you even read the NDA?" And the CTO, sweaty in his one-size-too-tight hoodie, probably saying something like, "Well, she wrote it, so we figured it was fine." Yeah, I did write it. And now I was going to use it. That night, I pulled up my timeline doc and started cleaning it for sharing, rewriting it in neutral language, formatting it for readability. I wasn't sending it to the press, that was sloppy. I was sending it to someone bigger, someone who actually mattered, their lead investor, The one with 3 board seats and a compliance department that took data exposure like a religion. The one I met once at a retreat who told me I was too sharp for middle management. Let's see if he still thinks so. I drafted a new message, attached a sanitized version of the timeline, my final audit dated the week before I was fired, and the Clause 10 screenshot. Subject: for your awareness, Compliance Framework Timeline. Message: thought you might appreciate some background ahead of next week's board meeting. I hit send. Then I closed my laptop and poured myself a drink. By Tuesday morning, it wasn't just news, it was blood in the water. The company's website quietly went down for scheduled maintenance. Users on Reddit were posting screenshots of their support chats getting ghosted mid-sentence. A whistleblower thread on Hacker News hit the front page with the title, "Startup X isn't just careless, they're dangerous." I didn't write it, but I recognized the formatting. That was Tom, one of the security guys they restructured last quarter. I had CNBC on in the background while I answered freelance emails. An anchor mentioned ongoing investigations into negligent data handling by emerging fintechs, and I smiled into my tea. At 9:46 a.m., another email from Jason, the GC. Subject: urgent request for call. Hi. We acknowledge Clause 10 and understand the gravity of the situation. We're requesting a direct conversation to explore a mutually beneficial path forward. Your insight is crucial. Please advise availability. I didn't respond. At 10:14, a follow-up. Subject: urgent. Proposal for collaboration. We're prepared to offer an advisory retainer retroactive to the date of the breach. Terms flexible. Please advise. I didn't respond to that either. Let them stew. By noon, a new email pinged in from a different address, a sleek domain. Short message. Subject: discreet check-in. Would you be open to a short discussion with our firm this week? Like your perspective on recent developments involving redacted. Signed, Lauren Gelman, Managing Partner, Shoreline Capital. Now, that was interesting. Shoreline had been quiet in the press, no public comments, no distancing, no visible outrage. That meant they weren't panicking, they were calculating. That made them the most dangerous people in the room, but also potentially the smartest. I replied with a single time, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Zoom. I sent a link. Wednesday came. She joined early, slick, sharp, and calm. Minimal makeup, zero jewelry, the tone of a woman used to hearing lies before lunch. Thank you for making time, she said. I just nodded. Let her get to it. We're aware you were involved in designing the compliance framework, she continued, voice smooth like a scalpel. We've received conflicting narratives about the circumstances surrounding your departure and the systems in question. She leaned in. I walked her through what really happened, no dramatics, just the facts. The audit, the warnings, the protocols dismantled, the sandbox merged with prod, the staged layoffs, the archived Slack threads, the CTO's brilliant decision to replace encrypted logs with performance monitoring shortcuts because encryption costs latency. I told her about the NDA, about Clause 10, about how no one in legal caught what I buried there because no one in that company ever really read the documents. They just skimmed for keywords and handed out pens. She listened, took notes, never once said, "Are you sure?" or "That's not what we heard." Just listened. When I finished, she asked only one thing. Do you have documentation? I almost laughed, but instead, I opened a secure folder on my screen and shared view-only access to the timeline, Slack exports, the final audit, and the metadata logs. She didn't blink. Thank you, she said simply. We'll be in touch soon. The call ended. I sat there for a moment, staring at the blank Zoom screen, and I realized what was different. For 6 years, I was the voice they muted when it wasn't convenient, the body they called on only when a fire needed putting out, the name they forgot until a lawsuit was whispering around the corner. Now, I was the one they couldn't move without, and I hadn't even raised my voice. It was a second meeting, this time with the firm's full oversight committee. No press, no fanfare, just a 7-person Zoom grid of executives who didn't waste time pretending they weren't furious. Lauren was there again, but now she was flanked by a man with silver hair and a face like a cracked granite countertop. That was Elias Morin, Shoreline's founder, a man who could make CEOs cry using only eye contact. The invite had said technical debrief, framework retrospective. The tone was clinical, surgical, but the stakes were dripping out the corners of the call like steam. I wore a black blouse, no jewelry, hair tied back. Let them look at me and forget every stereotype they ever had about non-essential back-end roles. I wanted to look like a scalpel in human form. Elias opened with a nod. Appreciate you walking us through your interpretation of what went wrong. He didn't blink when he said it, so I didn't either. No theatrics, no gotcha, just the bones of it all, laid bare and bloodless. I showed them audit number 4, my final report before I was removed. I highlighted the pages where I explicitly warned about misused analytics keys, where I begged for proper sandbox separation, where I flagged a cascading vulnerability that, if not patched, would open production data to internal eyes with debug access. I pulled up Slack exports, screenshots of threads where I was dismissed, cut off, overridden. I showed them my warnings ignored, the breach points avoidable, the changes made reckless. Then I showed them the timelines, matched audit dates with system changes, showed how the security downgrade directly coincided with a product launch they'd rushed to meet. I presented like I was in a courtroom. These men and women were the jury and the executioners. They didn't interrupt. At one point, Lauren leaned forward and said, "Who signed off on the rollback of encrypted logging?" I didn't answer. I just shared the page, internal approval record, initials in the top right corner, CT, Chief Technology Officer. Beside it, I added a Slack message the CTO sent to the engineering team. We're going live. If logs slow us down, kill the encryption. We'll fix it later. No one spoke for a full 10 seconds. Then Elias broke the silence with a slow exhale. Understood. That was it. The meeting ended not with outrage, not with promises, not with applause, just quiet, firm understanding, the kind that gets written into board memos and whispered in hallways with phrases like fiduciary exposure and governance realignment. The next morning, I opened my inbox to a news alert. Startup places COO, CTO on temporary leave amid data breach fallout. No names, no quotes, just amid internal review, the corporate version of a throat clearing before a guillotine drops. Aaron texted me 20 minutes later. You didn't even have to burn it down. You just turned on the lights. I smiled at my phone for a moment because she was right. For the first time in my career, the truth hadn't been buried in committee notes or overwritten by marketing spin. It had been heard, respected, acted on, and I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I just told the truth. And this time, the truth was enough. The calendar invite came through at 6:07 a.m. Subject: Urgent Fiscal Containment Strategy. External participation requested. From Jason Caldwell, General Counsel. No pleasantries, no request, just a block of time and a quiet white flag waving in the subject line. It was set for 10:30 a.m. that same morning. I clicked maybe. Then I waited. Let it sit there. Let them sweat. At 10:44, I joined the call, audio only, no video. Let them wonder where I was, what I was doing, what kind of power I held that I could stroll in 14 minutes late and still own the room. They were already talking when I arrived, muffled voices, tight tones. I heard Jason say, "Just need clarity around how to present this to auditors," followed by a female voice I didn't recognize, trying to smooth things over with terms like framework, narrative, and procedural transparency. I unmuted. "Good morning," I said, not cheerful, not hostile, just a scalpel wrapped in velvet. There was a pause. Jason recovered first. "Thank you for joining. We appreciate your time." "Let's skip the sentiment," I said. "What do you need?" They fumbled, started stacking jargon like sandbags, external perception management, coordinated disclosure pathways, alignment with regulatory optics. I waited for them to finish drowning in it. Then I said, "You need someone who actually understands what systems you broke, when, and how to describe it without triggering litigation or federal seizure." Silence. Jason cleared his throat. We'd like to bring you in on a short-term basis as an external consultant, preparing for multiple oversight hearings and investor disclosures. Your insight would be invaluable. He said it like the word was sour in his mouth. I let it sit for 3 full seconds before I responded. My rate is $950 an hour, I said. Prepaid. Billed in 4-hour blocks. I'll need legal indemnification and independent counsel on retainer. Your cost, not mine. No one objected, but I wasn't done. First condition: the CTO is not on any call I'm on. He does not message me. He does not email me. He does not exist. Again, silence. Then a quiet, clipped understood. They didn't even flinch at the number. That's how scared they were, how far the fire had spread. Jason asked, "Can we loop you in today on our draft report to the FTC?" "No," I said. "You'll send it to my counsel. I'll reply when I've been paid." They started to protest. I ended the call. 10 minutes later, a payment confirmation arrived in my inbox. 8 hours prepaid with the subject line "Retainer Received. Phase 1 Advisory Support." I opened a new folder, labeled it Containment Phase, paid and clear, and then I got to work, not for them, not to save them, but to make sure every fire they lit stayed exactly where it belonged, under their own feet. The hearing took place in a low-lit conference room on the 27th floor of a building with a logo they no longer deserved to wear. Long, sterile table, water bottles sweating onto faux wood, 6 investors in tailored silence, 1 junior associate trying to look invisible behind a MacBook, and at the end of the table, me. No nameplate, no introduction, just present. Jason, the general counsel, opened with a slide deck he clearly didn't make. The first title slide was labeled Proactive Mitigation Timeline, which was hilarious considering the last time they tried proactive mitigation, they deleted encryption logs and blamed the firewall. The CTO wasn't there, of course, I'd made that part of my contract, but his fingerprints were all over the mess. They tried to explain away the breach as unexpected friction between legacy systems and scaling demands, tried to rebrand carelessness as complexity, tried to decorate negligence into an unfortunate moment of misalignment. It almost worked until the investors began asking questions. What documentation existed around internal warnings? How far in advance was risk identified? Were there personnel concerns flagged ahead of the failure? Jason's smile started to crack. He stammered something about collaborative feedback cycles and internal trust building. That's when Lauren, silent until then, turned to me. "You conducted the final audit before your departure. Did the company uphold its internal compliance obligations based on your recommendations?" I could have given a speech. I could have dragged the whole room through the muck of every deleted Slack thread, every gaslit meeting, every weekend I lost to fixing what they broke. But I didn't. I pulled a single sheet of paper from my folder, the one line I'd highlighted in my final audit report. Failure to segment sandbox and production environments constitutes a critical violation of user data protection policy and will result in eventual exposure without immediate remediation. Then I set the page on the table. Dated, signed, 2 weeks before my firing. Silence. That silence hit hard, the kind that doesn't let up. One investor, a guy in a sharp navy suit, hadn't said a word all meeting. He snapped his laptop shut with one hand and shoved his chair back with the other. No fuss, no fight, just a cold, final exit. Lauren didn't even glance my way. She didn't need to. Her eyes were locked on Jason. "Thank you," she said, her voice flat. That was that. I stood up, grabbed my folder, and slipped on my coat. No applause, no handshakes, just a heavy pause as the door clicked shut behind me. By Friday, half the go-to-market team was gone. 2 VPs were retired without a peep. The rest were buzzing with recruiters and hitting refresh on LinkedIn like it was a casino game. Me? I was already home. Payment cleared. Account balance updated. Retainer done. I flipped open my laptop and made a new folder on my desktop, Forensic Consulting, Referrals. Then I opened the first email waiting for me. Subject: Shoreline gave us your name. We're building something secure this time. I grinned, not because I was flattered, but because this time I wasn't writing Clause 10 to cover my back. I was writing it to torch anyone who didn't listen. Huge shout out to you legends from the old office days. Subscribe to keep this chaos train rolling. Your ex-boss is sweating in their loafers.